For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. Camping alone in the wild is a wager. You stake your life on the thin thread of preparation, luck, and the mercy of nature, and in the great white north, mercy is a thing rarely given. The cold comes like a thief, silent and patient. It doesn't need to rush. It waits for the fire to die, for the blood in your veins to slow, for the mistakes to come. And mistakes always come. Let's venture back to the savage wilderness where survival is earned, not given. This is Outdoor Disasters. For Storm de Beul, his solo camping adventure would be perilous. Storm de Beul had always been drawn to the edges of the world, places where the air was thin and the silence spoke louder than words. His YouTube channel, Storm Outdoorsy, was born from this passion. An ASMR-style channel where the soothing sounds of nature, the crack of an axe splitting wood, or the sizzle of a hearty meal on the fire were the sole soundtrack to his videos. Though modest in following, it captured the essence of who Storm was. His videos were raw and unpolished. They weren't about spectacle or survival tricks, but about the quiet moments, the crackle of a campfire, the rustle of wind through pine trees, the way the morning sun painted the frost in gold. His audience, though small, was fiercely loyal. Comments on his videos were filled with admiration for his courage and envy for the simplicity of his life. Yet, his parents knew there was more to his solitude than a love for nature. Storm had always struggled to connect with people. Crowds made him uneasy, and small talk felt hollow. The wilderness, with its vastness and indifference, was a sanctuary where he didn't have to pretend. By 2024, Storm's hunger for adventure had grown insatiable. Lapland, with its endless forests, frozen lakes, and ethereal northern lights, seemed like the perfect challenge. It was a land of extremes, where the sun lingered on the horizon for weeks in summer and vanished entirely in winter. To Storm, it was a place where he could test himself, where he could confront the limits of his endurance and emerge stronger, or so he believed. He arrived in the Jokkmokk region in late spring, carrying little more than a backpack, a camera, and a heart full of ambition. The Jokkmokk region in Sweden is a part of the larger Lapland area, known for its breathtaking wilderness, harsh climate, and deep cultural history. Situated above the Arctic Circle, Jokkmokk is renowned for its stunning natural beauty, including dense forests, frozen lakes, and vast stretches of tundra. It is a place where the land remains raw and untamed, attracting adventurers and nature enthusiasts seeking solitude and challenge. Winters in Jokkmokk are long, dark, and brutally cold, with temperatures regularly dropping below -20 degrees Celsius or -4 degrees Fahrenheit, and sometimes even colder. Wind chills can make the environment feel much harsher. Snow blankets the landscape for much of the year, and blizzards are a frequent hazard, creating dangerous whiteout conditions that can disorient even experienced travelers. Jokkmokk's beauty is matched only by its danger. It is a place that demands respect and careful planning. For those who enter unprepared or underestimate the forces of nature, the cost can be severe. Over the months, Storm documented his journey with meticulous care, his videos chronicling both the splendor and the struggle of life in the wild. He climbed rocky ridges, forded icy streams, and marveled at the wildlife that roamed the tundra. Yet, as summer faded into fall and the days grew shorter, the wilderness began to reveal its harsher side. Storm, however, was undeterred. He thrived on the challenge, on the sense of isolation that would have crushed others. For all his preparation and resilience, Storm was venturing into a realm where nature held the upper hand, where even the most seasoned adventurer could find themselves at the mercy of forces beyond their control. As he set out for his final trek, unaware of the blizzard brewing on the horizon, he carried with him the boundless optimism of youth and the unshakable belief that he would always find his way back. It was late October when Storm found himself deep in the remote Jokkmokk region of northern Sweden. Lapland's endless forests and pristine silence had been his companions for months. The weather had been kind at first, crisp and cold but manageable. But as the season shifted, the wilderness began to show its teeth. By the time the snowstorm rolled in, Storm had already spent days trekking across the rugged terrain. His backpack, once brimming with essentials, had grown lighter with each mile, a quiet testament to the endurance he demanded of himself. Despite the worsening weather, he pressed on, filming the journey as always. When the first flurries fell, Storm wasn't concerned. He had faced snow before, and his confidence bordered on defiance. He recorded a video for a friend. "Tonight it's going to get worse, Jesus Christ," he admitted, as if the storm were a challenge to be met head-on, rather than a threat to his survival. His friend advised caution, urging him to reconsider. But Storm brushed it off. Fear, after all, had never been part of his repertoire. As the storm intensified, Storm reached out to the one person who always grounded him, his grandmother. Over the years, she had been a steadying presence in his otherwise untethered existence. "It's snowing heavily here, but don't worry, I'll survive, you know," he wrote. It was a statement as much for himself as for her, a mantra to keep panic at bay. The wind howled like a living thing, relentless and savage, clawing at the fabric of Storm's tent as if it sought to drag him out into the night. By 2 a.m., the storm had become more than an adversary. It was a force that could not be reasoned with. The snow had piled high around him, and the walls of his shelter sagged under its weight. Storm's hands trembled as he fumbled with his phone, the cold making every movement slow and deliberate. His message was brief, desperate. He needed help, and he needed it soon. The reply came quickly, but it brought no comfort. The roads were impassable, the skies too violent for helicopters. He was alone. The realization settled on him like the frost creeping into his limbs. It is likely the tent gave way sometime after that, collapsing inward with a sound like a muffled groan. The poles splintered, and the fabric snapped against him. Or the storm blew his tent away. Whatever happened, Storm was left exposed, the snow rushing in to take the place of his last defense. He had no choice but to move. He likely packed quickly, his hands numb and clumsy. A toothbrush and a sleeping bag, essentials he could carry, though they seemed like tokens of normalcy in a world that had turned against him. He pulled his jacket tight and leaned into the storm, each step a battle against drifts that swallowed him to the knees. The cold was like a predator, relentless and cunning. His breath came in shallow gasps, visible for only a moment before the wind tore it away. His feet sank deeper into the snow with every step, and the frost began to claim them. He felt the first warning signs of freezing, a dull ache, then nothing at all. Storm probably sought shelter, anything to block the wind and offer reprieve. A tree, its trunk thick and gnarled, became his anchor for a moment. He leaned against it, pressing his back to the rough bark, and pulled his sleeping bag around him. The blizzard screamed above him, but even here there was no warmth, no relief. The snow pressed against him, its weight unyielding. Storm knew he could not stay. To stay was to die. He pushed onward, his body sluggish and heavy, the frost climbing higher. He probably stumbled often, his legs betraying him, and once he fell hard enough to break his nose. Blood, warm for an instant, froze against his skin. The morning came, the light muted by the storm's dying rage. By now, Storm de Beul lay face down in the snow, his breath shallow, his body rigid with frost. The creeping cold had claimed his limbs, and hypothermia had taken full hold. In those final moments, his thoughts must have turned to home. His parents' warm embrace, his grandmother's gentle voice, the laughter of friends he'd never hear again. He knew with a sinking clarity that he had ventured too far, challenged too much. Now here he was, his strength spent, his will no longer enough against the unyielding grasp of Lapland's winter. The vast expanse of snow stretched endlessly, a cruel and indifferent beauty. His last breath mingled with the frozen air, a fleeting whisper swallowed by the silence of the wild. Storm de Beul had fought with everything he had, but nature does not bargain, nor does she forgive. She simply takes. And so he lay still, a warrior fallen in a white and icy grave, the merciless winter his final adversary. When rescuers found him, his body lay some distance from where he had started. His backpack was nearly empty, its contents left behind in a trail that spoke of his desperation. His legs were frozen solid, his face pale against the white of the snow. In his final hours, Storm had fought not just the storm, but himself, the limits of his strength, his endurance, and his will. It was a battle he could not win, but one he met with the quiet determination that had defined him. Even in the face of death, he had refused to surrender. Swedish emergency services received his distress call and quickly triangulated his position, but nature had already closed the gates. The blizzard rendered roads impassable and the skies too hostile for helicopters. The storm was no longer just a natural occurrence. It was a force that held him captive, indifferent to his pleas. For Storm, the wilderness had always been a place where he felt invincible. It wasn't arrogance that fueled him, but a quiet certainty that he could endure whatever it threw at him. He had walked the edge of danger countless times, trusting his instincts and preparation. But Lapland in winter is unforgiving, even for the most seasoned of adventurers. As the snow fell and the temperatures plunged, the wilderness held its secrets tight. But Beul refused to let his son's final chapter end there. Once the snow begins to thaw in May, I will walk the path from his tent to the spot where he was found in the hope of finding something of him. Imagine if his camera and memory card were still there, he vowed. The camera, with its frozen lens and untold memories, had become more than an object. It was a lifeline, a bridge between the son he had lost and the stories he had yet to share. Storm's parents drew parallels to the film Into the Wild, the story of another young man who sought solitude in the wilderness and paid the ultimate price. But they were careful not to romanticize their son's death. Not that we want to make Storm a hero, we just want him to be remembered as he was. Very calm water with very deep soils, his mother, Elizabeth, said. For those who followed his journey, Storm's videos remain a haunting tribute to a young man who found beauty in the starkest of landscapes and who lived and died on his own terms. His story, though tragic, serves as both a cautionary tale and an ode to the wilderness that he loved so deeply. In the northern wilderness, the stakes are higher. The cold doesn't forgive the man who forgets his gloves or the one who underestimates the storm. The wind is sharp enough to cut through layers, and the snow buries everything: footsteps, firewood, and hope. You wake to frost on your eyelashes and ice in your boots, and you know you are not a part of this place. You are an intruder, fragile and outmatched. Surviving a blizzard without the shelter of your tent is one of the most extreme challenges a solo camper can face. The first and most critical step is to stay calm and assess your situation. Panic leads to poor decisions, which can be deadly in such conditions. Identify essential gear like a sleeping bag, food, and tools. Protecting yourself from the cold becomes your highest priority. Layer up with all the clothing you have, paying special attention to your extremities. Adjust your pace and movements to keep warm without overexerting yourself, especially if you must travel to find shelter or safety. If your tent is unusable, your next step is to find or create shelter. Look for natural windbreaks, such as large rocks, trees, or terrain depressions. If the snow is deep enough, consider building a snow trench, as snow acts as an excellent insulator. Use whatever materials to construct a makeshift lean-to or windbreak. Conserving energy and retaining body heat is critical. If you are close to your original camp or expect rescuers to arrive, staying put is often the best choice. Moving unnecessarily expends valuable energy and increases the risk of getting lost. Keep yourself dry. Signaling for help is essential. Use bright-colored gear, clothing, or an emergency blanket to make yourself visible against the snow. If conditions allow, build a fire, not only for warmth but also as a beacon for rescuers. If you have a GPS device or phone, send your location as soon as possible. If you are forced to move, do so deliberately and carefully. Retrace your steps if possible or head toward visible landmarks. Mark your path using sticks, snowballs, or any other noticeable markers to ensure you don't lose your way or to help rescuers find you. While moving, periodically flex your fingers, toes, and limbs to maintain blood circulation and prevent frostbite. Even minor movement can keep your body functioning in freezing temperatures. Frostbite and hypothermia are constant threats. Regularly check your skin for numbness or discoloration. Hypothermia's early symptoms include uncontrollable shivering, confusion, and slurred speech. If you notice these signs, focus all efforts on retaining heat and conserving your core body. Staying hydrated and fueled is also crucial. Melt snow for water, but avoid eating it directly, as this lowers your body temperature. Consume small amounts of high-calorie foods like nuts, chocolate, or dried fruit to maintain your energy levels. Your body needs calories to generate heat, so ration your food wisely and eat periodically. Finally, remember that survival is as much a mental game as a physical one. Focus on small, achievable goals, reaching a visible tree, building a fire, or simply keeping your hands warm. Maintaining hope and pacing yourself can make the difference between life and an outdoor disaster. If you've made it this far, please consider clicking those subscribe and like buttons. Want more outdoor disasters content? Check out these videos I believe you'll enjoy. Thank you for watching.